So anime fans? What's up? Hope you are fine. So the new series is began, and the series name is What If Naruto Got Was in House of Dragon. So let's start the series. For 3 days, the sky over Blackwater Bay had been the color of bruised plums, heavy with clouds that refused to release their burden. The small folk of Flea Bottom whispered that the gods were angry, though which gods, they could not agree. The Septons prayed to the father and the mother. The old believers left offerings of bread and honey before heart trees that no longer stood in the capital. And the witches and wise women, those who remembered the ways of the first men, simply told their grandchildren to stay indoors and bolt the doors. None of it mattered. On the 4th night, the sky split open. Lightning fell like the wrath of 1,000 vengeful deities, each strike illuminating the city in stark, frozen moments. The dragon pit silhouetted against purple-white fire, the towers of the Red Keep trembling with each thunderous crash, the huddled masses of Flea Bottom visible for heartbeats before darkness reclaimed them. Rain fell not in drops but in sheets, in curtains, in waves that flooded cellars and drowned rats in their holes. And in the bay, the water began to churn. Fishermen who had dragged their boats ashore watched in terror as Blackwater Bay, calm and docile for generations, began to spin. A whirlpool formed at its center, vast and terrible, drawing debris and driftwood into its maw. The water glowed faintly, an impossible blue-green luminescence that had no natural explanation. And then, with a sound like the world tearing in half, something emerged from the depths. It was not a ship. It was not a creature of the deep, though many would later claim it was both. It was a sphere of golden light, perhaps 10 feet in diameter, pulsing with an inner radiance that made the lightning seem dim by comparison. It rose from the whirlpool slowly, majestically, and hung in the air above the bay for a long, suspended moment. Then it exploded. The light scattered across the water like 1,000 fireflies, each fragment dying as it touched the waves. The whirlpool collapsed. The rain ceased, as though someone had closed a celestial tap. And in the sudden, ringing silence, the people of King's Landing heard a single sound. A cough. When the sun rose the next morning, the beach below Aegon's High Hill held a gift for the crown. The guards found him first, 2 gold cloaks making their morning rounds, still shaken from the night's terrors. They nearly ran back to the city when they saw the bodies sprawled at the tide line, but duty, and the promise of reward if the man proved noble, kept them rooted. He was young, perhaps 16 or 17 years by his look. His hair was the color of spun sunlight, bright and wild, plastered against a face that might have been handsome if not for the 3 strange scars marking each cheek like whiskers. His clothes were unlike anything the guards had ever seen, a jacket of orange and black, torn and burned, with strange symbols embroidered along the collar. His trousers were ripped at the knees, and his feet, bare, scraped, bleeding, bore calluses that spoke of years of going unshod. But it was his stomach that drew their attention. The boy's jacket had been torn open, and there, spiraling across his abdomen, was a mark. It was not a tattoo, though it looked like one, a complex whirl of lines and characters that seemed to shift when viewed directly. It glowed faintly, even in the morning light, with the same blue-green luminescence that had filled the bay the night before. "Is he dead?" the younger guard whispered. As if in answer, the boy's eyes snapped open. They were blue. Not the pale blue of the Undulls or the gray blue of the north, but a blue so deep and vivid it seemed to hold the sky itself. For a moment, those eyes focused on nothing, and then they found the guards, and something behind them kindled. "Where?" the boy croaked, his voice rough with seawater. "Where am I?" The guards exchanged glances. His accent was strange, the words shaped oddly, but he spoke the common tongue well enough. "King's Landing, boy," the older guard said gruffly. "You've washed up on the shores of the 7 kingdoms. Can you stand?" The boy tried. He really did. But his body had other ideas. After 3 days in the churning chaos between worlds, after being vomited forth by powers he couldn't begin to understand, his muscles had forgotten how to obey. He collapsed back onto the sand, gasping. "Easy, easy," the younger guard said, kneeling beside him. "You've been through something, that's plain. Don't try to move." "The old gods preserve us," the older guard muttered, crossing himself. "Look at his face. Look at his belly. This one's been marked by something, sure as I'm standing here." The boy's eyes tracked between them, cataloging, assessing. Even exhausted and confused, the habits of a lifetime held. Shinobi did not survive by trusting strangers. But he was so tired. So very, very tired. "What's your name, boy?" the older guard demanded. For a long moment, the boy was silent. Then, slowly, painfully, he pushed himself up onto his elbows. "Naruto," he said. "My name is Naruto Uzumaki." And then the darkness took him again. The Red Keep 1 week later. Grand Maester Melos was not a man given to astonishment. In his 73 years, he had seen plagues and poxes, wounds that should have killed and illnesses that should have been fatal. He had delivered babies with horns growing from their temples and treated knights whose armor had melted into their flesh during tourney accidents. He had read every book in the Citadel's library before earning his chain, and he had forgotten more about the human body than most maesters would ever learn. The boy in front of him defied explanation. "The wounds have healed," Melos murmured, more to himself than to the king's hand seated in the corner. "All of them. The gash on his leg should have taken weeks to close, might have festered. Instead, it's scarred over completely. The bruising on his ribs gone. The fever that should have followed his time in the water never came." Ser Otto Hightower leaned forward in his chair, pale eyes narrowing. "And the marks on his face? On his stomach?" "The facial markings appear to be scars of some kind, though unlike any I've seen. They're too regular to be accidental, too precise. Almost as if they were applied deliberately." Melos hesitated. "The abdominal mark, however, that is something else entirely." "What do you mean?" Melos pulled back the blanket, revealing the spiraling seal on the boy's stomach. It pulsed faintly, rhythmically, like a second heartbeat. "I mean, my lord Hand, that this mark is not a scar. It is not a tattoo. It is active. It moves. The patterns shift when I am not looking directly at them. And if I focus too long..." He shuddered. "If I focus too long, I hear something. A voice. Deep and terrible and angry." Otto rose from his chair, approaching the bed with the careful steps of a man approaching a sleeping dragon. "You hear a voice?" "I am a man of science, my lord. I do not believe in voices." Melos straightened, his chain clinking. "But I know what I heard. Something is inside this boy, something ancient and powerful. And it is not happy to be here." The door opened before Otto could respond, and both men turned to bow as King Viserys I Targaryen entered the room. Viserys was not an imposing man, soft around the middle, with a kindly face and hands better suited to holding books than swords. But he was king, and when he spoke, men listened. "How fares our mysterious guest?" he asked, approaching the bed. "He lives, your grace," Melos said. "Against all expectation, he lives. But I cannot explain how, or why. The storm that brought him here, the whirlpool, the light, I have found no record of such phenomena in any text." Viserys studied the sleeping boy with thoughtful violet eyes. "And the mark on his belly?" "Active, your grace. Pulsing. Almost alive." The king was silent for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, he smiled. "Alive," he repeated. "How fitting. We are Targaryens, Grand Maester. We bound dragons to our blood with magic older than the Seven Kingdoms. Our ancestors spoke of such things, of marks and bindings, of beasts contained within human flesh. I thought it legend. I thought it myth." He reached out, stopping just short of touching the seal. "But perhaps there is more truth in the old tales than we knew." Otto stepped forward. "Your grace, if I may, this boy could be dangerous. He came from nowhere, in a storm that defies nature. He bears marks of power we do not understand. He should be confined, questioned. He should be given a chance to wake up and explain himself." Viserys interrupted mildly. "We are not savages, Otto. We do not imprison shipwreck sailors for the crime of surviving. We do not know he is a sailor. We do not know he is anything." The king's voice hardened slightly. "And until we do, he is a guest of the crown. See that he is treated as such." Otto bowed, hiding his frustration behind a mask of obedience. "Of course, your grace. As you command." The boy on the bed stirred. 3 pairs of eyes snapped to him as his eyelids fluttered, as his fingers twitched against the sheets. He groaned softly, a sound of pure exhaustion, and then, slowly, painfully, he opened his eyes. They were blue. So blue they seemed almost to glow in the dim light of the room. And in their depths, for just a moment, something ancient and terrible looked out at the king of the Seven Kingdoms. Then it was gone, and only a confused boy remained. "Where?" Naruto Uzumaki whispered. "Where am I?" Viserys Targaryen smiled. "You are in the Red Keep of King's Landing, young man. You are a guest of House Targaryen. And I, for one, am very interested to hear your story." Naruto stared at him for a long moment. Then, slowly, he pushed himself up in bed, wincing at the pain in his muscles. "My story," he repeated. That's going to take a while." "We have time." Viserys pulled up a chair and sat, motioning for Otto and Melos to do the same. "Tell me, boy, where do you come from? What manner of storm washes a man onto foreign shores with magic on his skin?" Naruto's hand drifted unconsciously to his stomach, to the seal that held the demon at bay. I come from a place called Kanahagakur, he said quietly. The village hidden in the leaves. And the storm that brought me here. He swallowed hard. That wasn't a storm. That was a battle. A battle I wasn't supposed to survive. In the corner of the room, hidden in the shadows, a servant girl with silver gold hair listened with wide violet eyes. Rhaenyra Targaryen, princess of the realm, had come to see the mysterious boy from the sea. She had not expected to feel her heart twist at the sadness in his voice. She had not expected to want to know more. The Godswood that night. Rhaenyra found him in the Godswood, sitting beneath the ancient oak that had stood on this hill long before Aegon the Conqueror's time. He had dressed in clothes provided by the household, simple linen and wool, far finer than anything he'd likely worn before, and he sat with his back against the trunk, staring up at the stars. You should be resting, she said, announcing her presence. He didn't startle. Didn't jump. He simply turned his head, and those impossible blue eyes found hers in the darkness. Couldn't sleep, he said. Too much in my head. Rhaenyra approached slowly, settling onto the grass a respectful distance away. The maester says you've been through something terrible. That your body is healing faster than it should, but your mind needs time. Naruto laughed, a short, bitter sound. My mind's been through worse. He paused, then added, Your Grace. Princess. Sorry. I'm not good with titles. My father says you're from somewhere called the Hidden Leaf. Kanahagakur. Yeah. He pulled his knees up to his chest, wrapping his arms around them. It's a long way from here. A really long way. Rhaenyra studied him in the starlight. He was young, perhaps her age, perhaps a little older. But there was something in his eyes that spoke of experiences far beyond his years. She knew that look. She saw it in the mirror sometimes, after dreaming of her mother's pain, her mother's fear. I won't ask you to tell me everything, she said softly. But I will ask, are you dangerous? The question hung in the air between them. Naruto was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. I don't want to be. It wasn't an answer. It was everything. Rhaenyra nodded slowly, accepting what he'd given her. Then I'll make sure no one here forces you to become one. He looked at her then, really looked, as if seeing her for the first time. And in that moment, something passed between them. An understanding. A connection. Two young people, carrying burdens they never asked for, meeting in the space between worlds. Why? He asked. You don't know me. I could be anyone. I could be lying. Could you? Rhaenyra smiled slightly. Lying takes practice. You're not practiced. You're just tired. And scared. And trying very hard not to show either. Naruto stared at her for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, he laughed, a real laugh this time, warm and surprised. Yeah, he admitted. Yeah, that's pretty much it. From the branches above, a raven cawed and took flight, startling them both. They watched it disappear into the night sky, heading toward the distant mountains. I should let you rest, Rhaenyra said, rising. But Naruto of the Hidden Leaf, if you need someone to talk to, someone who won't judge or question or try to use you, I'm here. She turned to go. Princess? She looked back. Naruto's face was serious now, the humor gone. Thank you. For being kind. It's been a while since anyone was just kind. Rhaenyra nodded once, then disappeared into the shadows of the Godswood. Above them, the stars wheeled on, indifferent to the fates of princes and princesses, of shinobi and dragons. But in the darkness beneath the ancient oak, a boy from another world sat alone with his thoughts, and for the first time since arriving in this strange land, those thoughts included something other than fear. They included hope. Chapter 2, The Dragon's Roar. 3 months later. The training yard of the Red Keep had never seen anything like it. Sir Criston Cole, Lord Commander of the King's Guard, stood at the edge of the practice ring with his arms crossed and his jaw hanging slightly open. Before him, a dozen of the finest knights in the 7 kingdoms lay sprawled across the dirt, groaning and clutching various injured body parts. Standing in their midst, barely winded, was a blond boy with whisker marks on his cheeks and a grin on his face that bordered on insufferable. Come on! Naruto called out, bouncing on the balls of his feet. Is that really all you've got? I've had tougher spars with toddlers. From the gallery above, Rhaenyra laughed, a bright, delighted sound that made several knights blush despite their pain. Beside her, Alicent Hightower watched with more reserved fascination, her hands clasped primly in her lap. He's extraordinary, Alicent murmured. He's impossible, Renera corrected, grinning. 3 months ago he could barely stand. Now he's defeated every knight in the keep, twice. Sir Kristen stepped into the ring, his face dark with humiliation on behalf of his order. You fight with dishonor, he growled. You move like an eel, you strike from angles no proper knight would consider. A proper knight would be dead, Naruto interrupted cheerfully. Your knights are trained to fight other knights. Me? I was trained to fight monsters. Kristen's hand went to his sword. Are you calling me a monster, boy? I'm calling you predictable. Naruto's grin faded, replaced by something sharper. You telegraph your strikes. You plant your feet too firmly. You think in straight lines. He tilted his head, and for just a moment, his blue eyes seemed to glow. In my world, shinobi who fight like that don't live long enough to become knights. The air crackled with tension. Kristen drew his sword, a training blade, but still dangerous in skilled hands. Naruto's hands moved to his belt, where a small pouch hung, a pouch the maesters had tried to remove, only to find that Naruto would rather fight the entire Kingsguard than give it up. Enough. The voice cut through the tension like a knife through butter. Everyone turned to see King Viserys approaching, his face set in stern lines. Kristen, sheath your weapon. Naruto, stand down. The king looked around at the fallen knights, and something like amusement flickered in his violet eyes. I see you've been busy. Naruto shrugged, suddenly sheepish. They wanted to see what I could do. And now they've seen. Viserys gestured for the fallen men to be helped away. Come with me, young Uzumaki. We have matters to discuss. The king's solar. Viserys waited until the doors were closed before speaking. The Stepstones, he said without preamble. You've heard of them? Naruto nodded cautiously. Pirates. Slavers. Crab-feeder guy. Renera mentioned it. Crab-feeder guy. Viserys' lips twitched. Yes, that's one way to describe him. Kragasdrahar, the self-styled prince of the Stepstones, has been preying on our shipping for years. Now he's getting bolder. He's taken several islands, declared himself ruler, and begun attacking vessels flying our flag. And you want me to do something about it? Viserys studied him for a long moment. I want to know what you are. Naruto blinked. What? 3 months ago, you washed up on my shores with a mark on your belly that pulses with power and a body that heals from wounds in days that would take other men weeks. You speak of another world, of villages hidden in leaves, of monsters sealed inside children. You move faster than any men I've ever seen, strike harder than any boy your size should, and you've single-handedly humiliated my entire garrison. Viserys leaned forward. So I ask again, what are you? For a long moment, Naruto was silent. Then, slowly, he lifted his shirt. The seal on his belly pulsed, visible even through the fabric. In my world, he said quietly, there are creatures called tailed beasts. Massive creatures of chakra, life energy, each with more power than an army. The strongest of them is the nine-tailed fox. A beast so powerful that entire nations have risen and fallen trying to control it. Viserys' eyes widened. And that mark contains it. Inside me. Naruto's voice was flat, emotionless. I'm what's called a Jinchuriki. A human sacrifice. A living prison for a monster that wants nothing more than to escape and destroy everything in sight. The king stared at him. In the corner, unnoticed by either of them, a hidden door stood slightly ajar, and behind it, Renera pressed her hand to her mouth, tears forming in her eyes. The people of my village hated me for it. Naruto continued. Feared me. Treated me like I was the monster instead of just the cage. And I spent my whole life trying to prove them wrong. Trying to show them that I was more than the thing inside me. And did you? Viserys asked softly. Prove them wrong? Naruto's face transformed. The flatness vanished, replaced by something fierce and bright. I was going to become Hokage, the leader of my village, the strongest and most respected ninja of all. I was going to make them acknowledge me, not as the fox, but as Naruto Uzumaki. His voice cracked. And then there was a battle. A war. And I don't know what happened. One moment I was fighting, protecting my friends, and the next. He trailed off, shaking his head. Viserys rose from his chair and crossed to stand before the boy. He was not a tall man, but in that moment, he seemed to fill the room. In this world, he said quietly, we have dragons. Beasts of legend, bound to my family by blood and magic. They are terrible and beautiful and capable of destroying cities. And yet we do not fear them. We honor them. We ride them. We make them part of ourselves. Naruto looked up, confused. You are not a monster, Naruto Uzumaki. You are not a cage or a sacrifice or a thing to be feared. Viserys placed a hand on his shoulder. You are a boy who carries a dragon inside him. And in my experience, dragon riders are the ones who change the world. From behind the hidden door, Rhaenyra wiped her eyes and made a decision. She would help this boy. She would protect him. She would show him that in this world, at least, he was not alone. And together, they would show the stepstones what happened when you woke the dragon, and the fox. The dragon pit the next day. Syrax was not pleased. The golden she-dragon hissed as Naruto approached, her massive head swinging toward him with predatory focus. The dragon keepers scrambled for cover, chains rattling as they retreated to safe distances. Easy, Rhaenyra murmured, stroking her dragon's neck. Easy, girl. He's a friend. I don't think she believes you, Naruto said, eyeing the dragon warily. He'd faced giant snakes and demonic foxes and enemy ninja by the hundred, but this was different. This was a creature of living flame, and every instinct he had was screaming at him to run. She'll come around. Rhaenyra hoped she sounded more confident than she felt. Dragons can sense things, emotions, intentions, the truth of a person's heart. Just be honest with her. Naruto took a deep breath. Then, slowly, he stepped forward. What are you doing, brat? Kurama's voice rumbled in his mind, startling him. The Nine Tails had been quiet since their arrival in this world, conserving strength, observing. That creature could incinerate you where you stand. I know, Naruto thought back. But Rhaenyra trusts her. And I trust Rhaenyra. Foolish. Probably. He stopped 3 feet from Syrax's massive head, close enough to feel the heat radiating from her scales, to see the smoke curling from her nostrils. Her eyes, golden, slit-pupilled, ancient, fixed on him with unnerving intelligence. Hey, he said softly. I'm Naruto. I'm kind of like you, I think. I've got a beast inside me too. He's not as pretty as you, and he doesn't breathe fire, but he's powerful. And scary. And most people run when they see him. Syrax's head tilted slightly. But Rhaenyra doesn't run from you. And she didn't run from me. Naruto reached out, very slowly, very carefully. So maybe we could be friends. His fingers touched her snout. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. The world held its breath. And then Syrax rumbled, a deep, contented sound that vibrated through Naruto's bones. She pushed her head against his hand, nudging him like an overgrown cat demanding attention. Well, Kurama muttered. I'll be damned. Rhaenyra laughed with pure delight. She likes you. She actually likes you. Naruto grinned, scratching behind a scale that might have been the dragon equivalent of an ear. I'm likable. Debatable, a new voice said dryly. They turned to find Demon Targaryen approaching, Caraxes slithering behind him like a massive red serpent. The rogue prince's eyes were sharp, assessing, as he took in the scene before him. So, he said, this is the boy from the sea. The one who's been beating my brother's knights into the dirt. Naruto's grin didn't waver. That's me. Demon studied him for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, he smiled, a dangerous expression that didn't quite reach his eyes. Good. The stepstones have been boring lately. I could use some entertainment. The War Council. We need a strategy, Demon declared, spreading maps across the table. Not just brute force, though I'm partial to brute force, but something that accounts for the terrain, the enemy's numbers, and those bloody crabs. The War Council had gathered in the small council chamber. Viserys, Demon, Otto Hightower, Lord Corlys Valerian, and a handful of other lords whose names Naruto had already forgotten. Rhaenyra sat at her father's right hand, and Naruto, to Otto's obvious displeasure, stood at her shoulder. The crab feeder has fortified several islands, Corlys said, pointing to locations on the map. He's using the caves, the narrow channels, the treacherous waters. Our ships can't get close enough to engage effectively, and our dragons, he glanced at Demon, can't stay aloft forever. Then we don't use ships, Naruto said. Everyone turned to look at him. Excuse me? Otto's tone was icy. You presume to advise us on naval warfare? You, a boy who? A boy who spent his whole life fighting in forests and mountains and villages built into cliffsides. Naruto met his gaze steadily. You're thinking like sailors. The crab feeder's thinking like a sailor. So don't be sailors. Demon's eyes lit up with interest. Go on. These islands. Naruto leaned over the map, pointing. They're connected, right? Underwater maybe, but above water? Shoals, sandbars, shallow channels? At low tide, yes, Corlys admitted. But no army could march across that terrain. The mud alone would swallow them, and the crab feeder's archers would pick them off from the cliffs. Armies can't. Ninja can. The room fell silent. Naruto straightened, his face serious. I'm not a general. I'm not a lord or a knight or whatever title you want to give me. But I am a shinobi. And shinobi don't fight fair. We don't line up in neat rows and charge at each other. We strike from shadows. We use the terrain. We turn our enemies' strengths into weaknesses. He pointed to the map again. The crab feeder thinks he's safe because his islands are hard to reach by sea. So we don't come by sea. We come on foot, across the shallows at low tide, moving fast and quiet. We hit his strongholds from behind while your dragons attack from above. We don't give him time to react, don't give him time to organize. We're in and out before he knows what's happening. And when the tide comes in? Corliss asked. When your path is cut off? Naruto smiled, a sharp, feral expression that reminded everyone present that beneath the cheerful exterior lurked something far more dangerous. Then I guess we better be fast. The gods would that night. You don't have to do this. Renera found him in their usual spot, beneath the ancient oak. He was sitting with his back against the trunk, staring up at the stars, and for a moment, she was struck by how young he looked. How small. Your father asked me to, he said without turning. My father asked you to advise, not to fight. The stepstones need to be dealt with. The crab feeder needs to be stopped. He shrugged. I can help. So I will. Renera sat beside him, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. And if you die? Then I die. His voice was flat. It wouldn't be the first time someone tried to kill me. Probably won't be the last. That's not an answer. He was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was softer, uncertain. In my world I had people. Friends. A whole village full of people who, eventually, came to care about me. I had a goal. A dream. And then I woke up here, and all of it was gone. He swallowed hard. I don't know if they're alive. I don't know if my world still exists. I don't know anything except that I'm alone in a place where I don't belong, carrying a monster inside me that wants out. Renera's heart clenched. Without thinking, she reached out and took his hand. You're not alone. He looked at her, surprised. You have me, she said simply. You have my father, who sees something in you worth nurturing. You have Demon, who respects strength above all else. You have... She hesitated, then continued. You have people who are beginning to care whether you live or die. Don't throw that away. Naruto stared at their joined hands. Then, slowly, a smile spread across his face, not the sharp grin he showed the world, but something softer, more vulnerable. You know, he said quietly. For a princess, you're pretty smart. Renera laughed, the sound bright in the darkness. Don't let it get around. I have a reputation to maintain. From the branches above, a night bird sang. And in the shadows, two young people sat together, hands clasped, facing an uncertain future with something they both thought lost forever. Hope. Chapter 3, Shadows over the Stepstones. Bloodstone, the low tide. They came with the darkness. 37 men, if they could be called men, moved across the mudflats like ghosts. They wore no armor, carried no banners, made no sound. They were shadows given form, death walking on two legs. At their head, Naruto Uzumaki moved with the fluid grace of a predator. His feet found purchase on ground that would have swallowed a normal man. His eyes pierced the darkness as if it were noon. Behind him, Demon Targaryen followed with a mixture of awe and barely concealed bloodlust, Caraxes circling somewhere above the clouds. How are you doing this? Demon breathed, barely audible over the wind. Doing what? Moving like that. Seeing like that. We should be blind out here, should be sinking into the mud, should be. Shinobi training. Naruto's voice was barely a whisper. I told you, we don't fight fair. They reached the base of the cliffs just as the tide began to turn. Above them, the crab feeder's fortress loomed, a crude structure carved into the rock, bristling with torches and watchful eyes. But the watchers were looking out to sea, scanning the horizon for ships that would never come. They never thought to look down. Now? Demon asked. Naruto closed his eyes, reaching out with senses that had nothing to do with sight. He felt the guards, their heartbeats, their breathing, the subtle shifts of their weight as they moved. He felt the wind, the tide, the distant presence of dragons circling above. He felt. There, Kurama's voice rumbled. That one. He's different. Naruto focused. Deep in the fortress, buried beneath stone and shadow, a presence burned. Not with chakra, Chakra didn't exist in this world, but was something similar. Something old and cruel and utterly without mercy. The crab feeder. He's mine. He's ours, Kurama corrected. Don't get cocky, brat. Naruto opened his eyes. Now. They climbed the fortress. The first guard died without a sound. One moment he was standing watch at his post, staring out at the dark sea. The next, a hand clamped over his mouth and a blade slid between his ribs with surgical precision. He slumped, and Naruto lowered him silently to the ground. Demon watched from the shadows, his own blade red with the blood of 2 more guards. The rogue prince had killed before, many times, in many ways, but he had never killed like this. Never so quietly, so efficiently, so easily. Spread out, Naruto whispered. Take the towers. Leave the main hall to me. You'll be outnumbered 50-1. I'll be fine. Demon hesitated, something almost like concern flickering in his eyes. Then he nodded and vanished into the darkness, his men following. Naruto turned toward the fortress's heart. You know, Kurama mused, I never thought I'd miss our world. But this is almost fun. Almost? Don't push it. The throne room. Kraga's the crab feeder, was not a handsome man. His face was a mass of scars and lesions, the result of years spent in damp caves, letting crabs pick at his flesh while he watched. It was said he felt no pain, that the creatures had eaten away everything in him that was human. It was said he kept his victims alive for weeks, letting the crabs do their work slowly. It was said many things. None of them prepared him for the boy who appeared in his throne room as if conjured from smoke. Evening, Naruto said cheerfully. The crab feeder's eyes widened. His guards, a dozen of his best, reached for their weapons. Then the boy moved. Demon heard the screaming from 3 levels up. By the time he reached the throne room, it was over. The guards lay scattered like broken dolls, some dead, some simply unconscious, all clearly outclassed. In the center of the room, Naruto stood over the crab feeder's prone form, 1 foot on the man's chest, a blade pressed to his throat. Yield, Naruto said quietly. The crab feeder laughed, a wet, horrible sound. Kill me, boy. See what happens. My men will. Your men are dead. Or running. Or about to be eaten by dragons. Naruto's voice was flat, emotionless. The stepstones are done. You're done. The only question is whether you die here, now, by my hand, or whether you face the king's justice. And what justice is that? A quick death? A merciful beheading? The crab feeder's eyes blazed with mad defiance. I've killed hundreds. Thousands. I've fed men to my pets while they still breathed. Do you think I fear? I don't care what you fear. The blade pressed deeper, drawing blood. I care about the people you hurt. The families you destroyed. The children you sold into slavery. Naruto leaned closer, and for just a moment, his eyes flickered red. In my world, men like you are considered less than human. Monsters to be put down. And I've put down a lot of monsters. The crab feeder stared up at him, and for the first time, something like fear entered his eyes. Please. Please what? Please don't kill you? Please let you go so you can do it all again? Naruto shook his head slowly. I'm not the king. I'm not a judge or a jury. But I am a shinobi. And shinobi protect people. That's all we are. That's all we've ever been. He stepped back, sheathing his blade. Bind him, he said to the soldiers who had gathered in the doorway. The king can decide what to do with him. Demon approached slowly, his eyes wide with something that might have been respect. You let him live. He's not worth killing. No. No, I suppose he isn't. Demon looked around at the carnage, at the bodies and the blood and the boy standing calmly in their midst. You could have taken this place yourself. You didn't need us. Probably not. Naruto shrugged. But your men needed to see it done. Needed to be part of it. And your sister. His voice softened slightly. Your niece needs you to come home a hero. Not a footnote. Demon stared at him for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, he laughed. You're a strange one, Naruto of the Hidden Leaf. Strange and dangerous, and not nearly as simple as you pretend to be. He clapped a hand on Naruto's shoulder. Come. Let's go home. I believe we have a victory to celebrate. King's Landing 2 weeks later. The city went mad with joy. Word of the Stepstones' victory had spread like wildfire, and by the time Demon's fleet returned to port, the docks were packed with cheering crowds. They threw flowers, they sang songs, They chanted the names of the heroes who had freed them from the crabfeeder's shadow. But in the Red Keep, away from the celebrations, a different kind of scene unfolded. You did what? Renera's voice was incredulous. Naruto winced. I sort of jumped off a dragon. You jumped off Syrax. In the middle of battle. To land on a pirate ship. It seemed like a good idea at the time. Renera stared at him. Then, slowly, a smile spread across her face, followed by a laugh so bright and unexpected that several servants poked their heads out to see what was happening. You're impossible, she managed between giggles. Absolutely impossible. Naruto grinned, relieved she wasn't angry. So I've been told. They stood together on a balcony overlooking the city, watching the celebrations below. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold, and for a moment, everything felt right. I was worried about you, Renera admitted quietly. Every night I lay awake thinking, what if he doesn't come back? What if I never see him again? Naruto's grin faded. He turned to look at her, really look, and something in his chest shifted. I'm here, he said softly. I'm not going anywhere. Renera met his eyes, and for a long, suspended moment, neither of them spoke. The distance between them seemed to shrink, seemed to vanish entirely. My lady! My lord! They sprang apart as a servant rushed onto the balcony, breathless with excitement. The king requests your presence in the throne room. There's to be a formal announcement, a reward for the heroes of the Stepstones. Renera composed herself, but not before Naruto caught the faint blush on her cheeks. We'll be right there, she said. The servant bowed and hurried away. Naruto cleared his throat. So, throne room? Throne room. Renera smoothed her dress, refusing to meet his eyes. We should go. Yeah. They walked in silence, but something had changed between them. Something neither of them was ready to name. The throne room. King Viserys sat on the Iron Throne, looking every inch the ruler his ancestors had been. Beside him stood Otto Hightower, his face carefully neutral, and Alicent, whose eyes tracked Naruto with an intensity that made him uncomfortable. Approach, Viserys commanded. Naruto walked forward, acutely aware of every eye in the room. Lords and ladies lined the walls, their whispers a constant murmur beneath the weight of royal attention. He stopped before the throne and knelt, a gesture that still felt strange after months in this world. Rise, Naruto Uzumaki of the Hidden Leaf. Viserys' voice was formal, but his eyes held warmth. For your service in the Stepstones, for your valor in battle, for the wisdom and strength you have shown in defense of this realm, I name you a hero of the Seven Kingdoms. A murmur ran through the crowd. Furthermore, in recognition of deeds too numerous to list, I grant you lands and titles befitting a lord of the realm. From this day forward, you shall be known as Naruto of House Uzumaki, Lord of the Tidal Keep, Warden of the Stepstones March. Naruto's jaw dropped. You're making me a lord? I'm giving you a place in this world. Viserys' voice softened, becoming almost fatherly. You came to us with nothing but the clothes on your back and a monster in your belly. You've given us everything. It's time we gave something back. Naruto looked around the room, at the lords and ladies, at Demon grinning in the corner, at Alicent watching with an unreadable expression, at Renera. Whose eyes shone with pride. I don't know what to say, he admitted. Say you'll accept, Viserys suggested mildly. It's traditional. Naruto laughed, the sound bright and unexpected in the formal chamber. I accept. I thank you, Your Grace. I won't let you down. I know you won't. Viserys rose, descending from the Iron Throne to stand before him. You've given me hope, Naruto Uzumaki. Hope that this world can be better than it is. Hope that my daughter's future, all our futures, might be brighter than I'd feared. He placed a hand on Naruto's shoulder. Welcome to the family. The room erupted in applause. And in the midst of it all, Naruto caught Renera's eye, and saw something in her gaze that made his heart skip a beat. The gods would late that night. He found her beneath the ancient oak, as he'd known he would. Couldn't sleep? He asked softly. Renera looked up, and even in the darkness, he could see the tracks of tears on her cheeks. Too much to think about, she whispered. Naruto sat beside her, close enough to feel her warmth. Want to talk about it? She was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, she leaned against him, her head resting on his shoulder. My father spoke of my future, she said quietly. Of heirs and alliances and the weight of the crown. He wants me to marry, to secure the succession, to give the realm stability. Her voice cracked. But I don't want to be a pawn in someone else's game. I don't want to spend my life as a bargaining chip. Naruto's arm came up around her, pulling her closer. Then don't. It's not that simple. It never is. He stared up at the stars, at the unfamiliar constellations that had become almost familiar over the months. In my world, I was a pawn too. A tool. A weapon to be aimed at the enemy. But I decided, somewhere along the way, that I wasn't going to let anyone else write my story. I was going to write it myself. Renra lifted her head, meeting his eyes. And did you? Write your own story? I started to. I had friends, people who believed in me, a dream I was working toward. He smiled sadly. And then I ended up here, and I had to start all over again. Are you glad you did? Start over? Naruto considered the question carefully. He thought of the fear and confusion of those first days, the loneliness, the desperate hope that someone, somewhere, would see him as more than the monster in his belly. He thought of Visery's kindness, Demon's grudging respect, the knights he'd trained with, and the battles he'd fought. He thought of her. Yeah, he said softly. I think I am. Renra smiled, a real smile, bright and warm and full of something that made his heart race. Good, she whispered. Because I'm glad you're here too. And there, beneath the ancient oak, with the stars wheeling overhead and the city sleeping below, two young people sat together in the darkness, and began to write the next chapter of their story. Chapter 4, The Weight of Crowns. 1 year later. The stepstones had changed. Where once there had been barren rock and pirate dens, now there were walls and towers and the beginnings of a proper keep. Fishing villages dotted the shores, their boats protected by patrols that swept the waters daily. Trade had returned, brought by merchants who found safe passage through what had once been the most dangerous waters in the known world. And at the heart of it all, in a half-finished castle perched on the cliffs of Bloodstone, Naruto Uzumaki sat with a stack of reports that seemed to multiply every time he looked away. I hate this, he muttered. From her position by the window, Renra laughed. You're a lord now. Lords do paperwork. I'm a ninja. Ninja do missions. You're a ninja lord. You do both. Naruto groaned, dropping his head onto the pile of parchment. This is your fault, you know. If you hadn't convinced your father to give me this place. If I hadn't convinced my father to give you this place, the Stepstones would still be a pirate haven, and you'd be moping around the Red Keep with nothing to do. Renra crossed to him, leaning over his shoulder to look at the reports. Besides, you're doing wonderfully. The fishing villages have tripled their catch. The trade routes are secure. Even the climate seems to have improved. The climate didn't improve. I just stopped the raiders who were burning everything. Semantics. Naruto lifted his head just enough to glare at her. She smiled serenely back. I hate you too, he informed her. No, you don't. No, he admitted. I don't. They'd grown closer over the past year, much closer. Viserys had noticed, of course, and while he hadn't explicitly approved, he hadn't objected either. Demon found the whole situation endlessly amusing. Alicent watched with a complicated expression that Naruto couldn't quite read. And Renra. Renra had become the center of his world. I have news, she said, her tone shifting to something more serious. From King's Landing. Naruto straightened, immediately alert. What kind of news? The kind that requires your presence. She hesitated. My father is ill. The maesters say it's serious. The words hung in the air between them. How serious? Naruto asked quietly. They don't know. They can't predict. Renra's voice was steady, but he could see the fear in her eyes. He wants to see you. Before it's too late. Naruto rose, pulling her into his arms. She came willingly, burying her face against his chest. I'm sorry, he whispered. I know how much he means to you. He means everything to me. Her voice was muffled. And I'm so scared, Naruto. If he dies, everything changes. The succession, the alliances, the peace he worked so hard to build, it could all fall apart. Then we won't let it. He held her tighter. Whatever happens, I'm with you. Always. She looked up at him, and in her eyes he saw love and fear and hope all tangled together. Promise? She whispered. Promise. King's Landing 1 week later. The Red Keep felt different. Naruto couldn't quite put his finger on it, but something had shifted in the weeks since his departure. The servants moved more quietly. The guards stood a little straighter. And in the corridors, lords and ladies whispered in corners, their eyes tracking him as he passed. The king was dying. Everyone knew it. No one said it aloud. Naruto found Viserys in his chambers, surrounded by maesters and attended by a white-faced Alicent. The king looked diminished. His skin had a grayish cast, his eyes were sunken, and when he tried to smile at Naruto's entrance, the expression seemed to cost him great effort. "Leave us," Viserys commanded. The maesters hesitated, but a look from the king sent them scurrying. Alicent lingered for a moment, her eyes meeting Naruto's with an expression he couldn't decipher, before she too withdrew. Naruto approached the bed slowly. "Your Grace." "Viserys." The king's voice was weak but firm. "When we're alone, call me Viserys. You've earned that much." Naruto nodded, pulling up a chair. "Viserys, then. How bad is it?" "Bad enough." Viserys shifted, wincing. "The maesters speak in circles, but the truth is simple. My body is failing. The cuts on my throne, the ones that never healed properly, they've festered. The infection spreads. Soon." He trailed off, shrugging weakly. "Soon, I'll join my ancestors." "I'm sorry." "Don't be. I've lived longer than I deserved, seen more than I hoped." Viserys' eyes found his, sharp despite his weakness. "But there's something I need to ask you. Something important." "Anything." "Rhaenyra." Naruto's heart clenched. "What about her?" Viserys studied him for a long moment, and despite his illness, there was nothing weak in that gaze. "I've seen the way you look at her. The way she looks at you. I'm not blind, boy, and I'm not a fool." Viserys, "Let me finish." The king held up a trembling hand. "I'm not angry. In fact, I'm grateful. In a world full of people who want to use her for their own ends, you've given her something precious. Friendship. Trust. Love, perhaps." He smiled faintly. "But love isn't enough. Not for a princess. Not for the heir to the Iron Throne." Naruto's hands clenched on his knees. "I know. Do you? Do you understand what will happen when I'm gone? The vultures will circle. The lords who've always resented the idea of a ruling queen will find excuses to oppose her. Her own half-brother." Viserys' voice caught. "My son Aegon will be used as a pawn by those who see him as a better alternative. There will be war, Naruto. War such as this realm hasn't seen since the conquest. Then I'll protect her." "You'll try. I don't doubt that." Viserys reached out, grasping Naruto's arm with surprising strength. "But one man, even one as extraordinary as you, cannot stand against the combined might of 7 kingdoms. You need more than strength. You need allies. Power. A position that cannot be challenged." Naruto frowned. "What are you saying?" Viserys took a deep breath. "I'm saying, if you love my daughter, if you truly want to protect her, then you must become more than a lord. You must become a prince." The words hung in the air like thunder. "What?" "I'm offering you Rhaenyra's hand. In marriage." Viserys' sighs were steady. "You would be prince consort, standing at her side, sharing her claim. Your strength, her blood, together you might be strong enough to hold the realm together." Naruto's mind reeled. Marriage. To Rhaenyra. The thought had crossed his mind, of course, late at night, in the quiet moments between battles, but he'd always dismissed it as impossible. He was an outsider. A foreigner. A Jinchuriki carrying a monster in his belly. "I can't," he whispered. I'm not worthy of her. I'm not." "You're exactly what she needs." Viserys squeezed his arm. "You're strong where she's vulnerable. You're loyal where others are treacherous. You carry a burden that would have crushed most men, and yet you smile, you laugh, you fight for others instead of yourself. Don't tell me you're not worthy. I've seen worthy men. You exceed them all." Naruto stared at him, tears pricking at his eyes. "Why? Why would you trust me with this? With her?" "Because she loves you." Viserys' voice softened. "And because—" He paused, coughing weakly. "Because I've spent my whole life trying to hold this realm together through compromise and conciliation. And all it's brought me is a broken body and a succession crisis. Perhaps it's time to try something different. Perhaps it's time to trust in strength and love instead of politics and fear." He released Naruto's arm, sinking back onto his pillows. "Think about it," he whispered. "Talk to her. Decide together. But decide soon. I don't have much time left." The gods would. She was waiting beneath the ancient oak, as if she'd known he would come. "Did he ask you?" Rhaenyra's voice was quiet, uncertain. Naruto nodded, sitting beside her. "He did." "And what did you say?" I said I needed to talk to you. She was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, she reached out and took his hand. I love you, she whispered. I don't know when it happened, or how, or why. But I love you, Naruto Uzumaki. And if you asked me to run away with you, to leave all of this behind and start a new life somewhere far from thrones and politics and the weight of crowns, I would say yes. Naruto's heart swelled. Renara. But I can't. Tears glistened in her eyes. I can't abandon my father. I can't abandon the realm. I can't watch everything he built crumble because I was too selfish to do my duty. She squeezed his hand. So if you want to be with me, truly be with me, it has to be here. In this world. With all its complications and dangers and the constant threat of war. Naruto lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a gentle kiss to her knuckles. I know, he said softly. And I'm not asking you to run away. I'm asking you to let me stand beside you. As your husband. As your partner. As whatever you need me to be. Renara's breath caught. You mean it? I mean it. He smiled, that warm, genuine smile that she'd come to love. I'm not a prince. I'm not even really a lord. But I'm yours, Renara. I've been yours since the moment you found me in this godswood and offered me kindness when I had nothing. She laughed through her tears. We're a pair, aren't we? A princess and a ninja, trying to hold together a kingdom that's been tearing itself apart for generations. We're more than a pair. He pulled her close, pressing his forehead to hers. We're a team. And teams don't lose. In the darkness of the godswood beneath the ancient oak, they held each other, and began to plan for a future that neither of them could predict. The Red Keep the next morning. The announcement sent shockwaves through the court. Naruto Uzumaki, the foreign boy from nowhere, the hero of the Stepstones, the lord of a half-finished keep on a barely habitable island, was to marry Princess Renara Targaryen, heir to the Iron Throne. Otto Hightower's face went white. Demon roared with laughter and immediately began planning the most outrageous celebration the Seven Kingdoms had ever seen. Alicent stood frozen, her expression unreadable, her hands clasped so tightly that her knuckles showed white. And through it all, Renara and Naruto stood together, hands clasped, facing the future as one. You've made an enemy today, Renara murmured as they watched the court react. Several, in fact. I've made enemies before. Naruto's voice was steady. What's a few more? She smiled, leaning into him. I love you. I love you too. He pressed a kiss to her temple. Now let's go plan a wedding. Apparently, I have to learn a lot of boring traditions. You really do. I'm regretting this already. No, you're not. No, he admitted. I'm not. Chapter 5, The Wedding and the Widow. The Great September of Baylor, the day of the wedding. The Seven Kingdoms had never seen anything like it. The Great September blazed with light, candles by the thousand, sunlight streaming through stained glass, the gleam of gold and silver on every surface. Lords and ladies from every corner of the realm packed the pews, their silks and velvets a riot of color against the white stone. And at the altar, beneath the watchful eyes of the seven, Renara Targaryen waited for her groom. She was radiant. Her gown was Targaryen red and black, embroidered with dragons and gold thread, trailing behind her in a train that seemed to go on forever. Her silver-gold hair hung loose, as was tradition for a maiden bride, and on her brow sat a circlet of Valerian steel, a gift from her father, who watched from a specially prepared chair, too weak to stand but too proud to miss his daughter's wedding. The doors opened. Naruto Uzumaki walked down the aisle. He wore the traditional black of a groom, but his clothes had been adapted to honor his origins. The cut was that of a shinobi's garb, the fabric embroidered with the spiral symbol of his mother's clan. His whisker marks stood out against skin that had been carefully cleaned and prepared, and in his eyes burned a light that had nothing to do with the candles. He reached the altar. He took her hands. And for a long, suspended moment, the world fell away. You're beautiful, he whispered. You're not so bad yourself, she whispered back. The High Septon cleared his throat. We are gathered here today. The ceremony passed in a blur. Vows were spoken, cloaks were exchanged, hands were bound with ribbons of red and gold. And when the Septon finally pronounced them man and wife, when Naruto lifted the veil and leaned in to kiss her, the roar that went up from the crowd shook the very foundations of the September. They emerged into sunlight, and the city went mad. Flowers rained from every window. Bells pealed from every tower. The small folk lined the streets, cheering and crying and throwing themselves at the guards' horses in their enthusiasm. And through it all, Naruto and Renara rode side by side, hands clasped, faces bright with joy. Are you happy? He asked. I didn't know it was possible to be this happy, she admitted. You. He squeezed her hand. Same. The Red Keep, the wedding feast. The great hall groaned under the weight of the celebration. Tables stretched from one end to the other, laden with enough food to feed the city for a month. Wine flowed like water. Musicians played in every corner. And on the dais, the newlyweds sat side by side, accepting the congratulations of 1,000 guests. But not all eyes were friendly. Otto Hightower watched from the shadows, his face carefully neutral, his mind already working through the implications of this match. The Uzumaki boy had just become the most powerful man in the realm after the king himself, and Otto had spent years positioning his own blood for that spot. Allison sat beside her father, her expression unreadable. She'd congratulated the couple with every appearance of warmth, but something in her eyes, something flickered when she looked at Naruto. Something that might have been regret. Or longing. Or something darker. And in a corner of the hall, a messenger in gray hurried toward the dais, his face pale with urgency. The king's chambers hours later. Viserys Targaryen died as he had lived, with dignity, with grace, and surrounded by those he loved. Rhaenyra held his hand as he slipped away, tears streaming down her face. Naruto stood behind her, a silent presence, his hand on her shoulder. And in the doorway, Demon watched with an expression that might have been grief, might have been relief, might have been something in between. I'm proud of you, Viserys whispered, his eyes fixed on his daughter. So proud. You'll be a great queen. The greatest. Don't go, Rhaenyra begged. Please. I'm not ready. You're more ready than you know. His gaze shifted to Naruto. Take care of her. Promise me. I promise. Naruto's voice was steady, though his eyes were wet. With everything I am. Everything I have. I'll protect her until my last breath. Viserys smiled. Good. That's good. His eyes closed. His chest stilled. And the king who had held the 7 kingdoms together for 3 decades passed into history. Rhaenyra's scream echoed through the Red Keep. The queen's first morning. Dawn broke over King's Landing, and for the first time in living memory, a woman sat the Iron Throne. Rhaenyra Targaryen, first of her name, Queen of the Undulls and the Rhoynar and the First Men, Lady of the 7 Kingdoms, Protector of the Realm. The titles rolled off the tongue like honey and poison mixed together. The coronation was rushed. There was no time for the usual pomp, not with the vultures already circling. But when the crown was placed on her brow, when she turned to face the assembled lords and ladies, something in the hall shifted. She looked like a queen. She sounded like a queen. And beside her, dressed in the black and red of her house, Naruto Uzumaki stood like a wall of living iron. The lords will test her, Otto murmured to his daughter. The strong ones will bend the knee and wait for weakness. The weak ones will rebel outright. And the clever ones? He smiled thinly. The clever ones will watch and wait and choose their moment. Allison said nothing. Her eyes were fixed on the dais, on the queen and her consort, and her expression was unreadable. The small council 1 week later. The Vale is restive, Lord Corlys reported. The Riverlands are quiet, but that could change. The North has always been loyal to the throne, but they're far away and slow to move. The Westerlands? Rhaenyra asked. Otto Hightower shook his head. Lord Jason Lannister has not yet declared. He waits to see which way the wind blows. And my half-brother? Silence. Rhaenyra's eyes hardened. I asked a question. Where is Aegon? Otto's face was carefully blank. Prince Aegon resides in the Red Keep, Your Grace. He has made no public statements regarding your succession. But privately? Privately, he is influenced by those who see advantage in his claim. Name them. A long pause. Then, quietly. My son, Sir Criston Cole. Several lords of the Reach. And... Otto hesitated. And my daughter, the Queen Dowager. Rhaenyra's expression didn't change, but Naruto felt her hand clench beneath the table. Alicent, she said flatly. My childhood friend. My father's wife. She would move against me? She would protect her son. Otto's voice was carefully neutral. As any mother would. The council dissolved into arguments after that, strategies and counter-strategies, alliances to be forged and enemies to be watched. But Naruto barely heard any of it. His eyes were fixed on Rhaenyra, on the weight settling onto her shoulders, on the transformation happening before his eyes. The girl he met in the Godswood was gone. In her place sat a queen. He only hoped she wouldn't lose herself entirely. The queen's chambers that night. I knew it would be hard. Renera's voice was quiet in the darkness. I knew there would be opposition. But Alicent. She shook her head. We grew up together. We were friends. Sisters, almost. And now she's plotting to put her son on my throne. Naruto held her close, saying nothing. There were no words for this kind of betrayal. I have to be strong, she whispered. I have to be harder than they expect. Colder. If they see weakness, they'll tear me apart. You're not weak. No. But I have to make them believe I am. So they'll show their hands, commit their forces, and then. She made a slashing gesture. Then I'll cut them down. Naruto pulled back to look at her. In the candlelight, her face was beautiful and terrible, the face of a dragon rider who had finally accepted her nature. I'm with you, he said quietly. Whatever comes. Whatever you have to do, I'm with you. She smiled, a sad, tired smile. I know. That's the only thing keeping me sane. They held each other as the night deepened, as the city slept, as the first shadows of the coming war gathered on the horizon.